The Chanel luxury bag scandal just got exposed, and Chanel lovers are furious. Not annoyed, not disappointed, not mildly inconvenienced. They are boiling. Because for the first time in decades, the world's most iconic luxury house is facing accusations that strike at the heart of what Chanel built its empire on: craftsmanship, exclusivity, and absolute trust. And now, that trust has cracked. This scandal isn't about a single bad batch of bags. It's not about one viral complaint or some minor customer service slip-up. It's about a pattern, a growing, loud, inescapable pattern that's been bubbling for years and finally erupted in 2025. A pattern of declining quality, a pattern of rising prices, a pattern of customers snapping, and a pattern of revelations that have left Chanel struggling to maintain the image it once held effortlessly. The truth came out piece by piece until suddenly there was too much for the brand to hide. The grumbling began with quality issues. It started quietly, small comments, small complaints, customers noticing little flaws, nothing outrageous, just enough to raise eyebrows. A stitch slightly crooked, a chain strap that tarnished faster than expected, leather that scuffed too easily, a bag purchased last season that felt somehow thinner than one from 5 years ago. Longtime Chanel owners could feel it instantly. They've touched the caviar leather from the 90s, the buttery lambskin from the early 2000s, the hardware that weighed like actual jewelry. They knew quality by muscle memory. So when recent bags didn't feel as luxurious, people began murmuring, and those murmurs turned into posts, then threads, then TikToks, then huge, multi-million view breakdown videos comparing old Chanel to new Chanel. The evidence was undeniable. The quality wasn't the same. Some owners even joked that their grandmother's Chanel was built like a tank, while theirs couldn't survive a car ride without a scuff. But this wasn't just nostalgia. It wasn't just the romanticizing of back then. It was real. Former artisans came forward saying production had sped up. Collectors said materials felt cheaper. Restorers confirmed newer bags needed repairs more often. Chanel denied everything, of course, but owners weren't buying it, figuratively and literally. And that's when the real scandal began to unfold. Then came the price hikes, and not small ones. While customers were raising concerns about quality, Chanel was doing something bold and extremely unpopular, raising prices, not gradually, not reasonably, but aggressively, far beyond inflation, far beyond materials cost, far beyond competitors. A classic flap that cost around $5,000 a decade ago surged past $10,000. Some models nearly doubled in price in under 5 years. Chanel's reasoning? We want our bags to reflect their true value. Translation customers jokingly used, we want our bags to cost as much as a small car. But here's where the scandal deepens. Prices were going up while quality was going down. That combination is the luxury equivalent of adding insult to injury. Customers felt played, collectors felt robbed, new buyers felt stupid. Luxury experts called Chanel's pricing strategy hostile, tone-deaf, and delusional. Others accused the brand of trying to mimic her mess, without having the same craftsmanship to back it. When Chanel increased prices but not quality, people tolerated it. But when they increased prices and quality dropped, that's when the outrage truly erupted. The 2024 revenue drop and the internal panic. And then, out of nowhere, it happened. Chanel's revenue dropped. This was unheard of. Chanel is supposed to be invincible. It's supposed to be the luxury world's unstoppable powerhouse. Demand for Chanel handbags is supposed to be eternal. But in 2024, the numbers slipped. Quietly, subtly, but significantly enough that insiders started talking. Chanel, the brand famous for back-to-back price hikes, suddenly paused them. No major increases, no seasonal spikes, nothing. That had never happened before. Analysts began asking questions. Why pause now? Was demand slowing? Were customers finally fed up? Was the company dealing with backlash behind the scenes? Luxury blogs began reporting consumer resistance. Store associates whispered about quieter boutiques. Shoppers said appointments weren't as difficult to get. Some even said they walked into boutiques that used to feel like fortresses and found staff actually trying to sell them something. This wasn't a brand running at full power anymore. This was a brand trying to contain a growing fire, and that fire was about to become a full blaze. The bag exchange scandal, the incident that blew up online. The spark that turned frustration into fury came from South Korea, a place where luxury brands are practically religion, and long lines outside boutiques are normal. An investigation revealed that Chanel bags were being used as gifts and exchanges in a political scandal involving prominent public figures. Bags were allegedly passed, traded, gifted, exchanged, and hidden in ways that made Chanel look less like a symbol of elegance and more like a form of currency in backroom deals. The scandal was everywhere in Korean news. It spread internationally, it raised questions about transparency, favoritism, and the role luxury brands play in corruption. Chanel didn't cause the scandal, but their brand was dragged into the spotlight as millions of viewers watched footage of government officials handing Chanel bags to each other like envelopes of cash. The association was damaging. Chanel became part of a national investigation. Searches for Chanel scandal skyrocketed. And for many people, especially in Asia, where Chanel's customer base is massive, the brand suddenly felt tainted. Owners were embarrassed. Customers were furious. The brand's pristine image took a direct hit. It was the worst kind of scandal for a luxury house, the kind that makes people question the brand's integrity, not just its products. The counterfeit crackdown backfired. At the same time, Chanel was aggressively cracking down on counterfeiters and unauthorized resellers. They filed lawsuits. They demanded the destruction of inventory. They tightened boutique rules. They limited access. They refused repairs for items without store receipts. In theory, this was good. Chanel was protecting its reputation. In practice, it backfired. Honest owners got caught in the crossfire. People who bought vintage Chanel years ago suddenly couldn't get repairs without proof they didn't have anymore. Some customers said boutique staff treated them suspiciously for bringing in older items. Others said Chanel accused their secondhand bags of being counterfeit even when third-party authenticators verified they were real. That made Chanel look not protective, but hostile. Not exclusive, but paranoid. Not prestigious, but difficult. Customers started saying things like, Chanel doesn't even trust us with their own products. Why would I buy a $10,000 bag if they treat me like a criminal? I pay luxury prices and get fast food customer service. And those sentiments traveled fast, because once the internet feels disrespected, it does not stay quiet. The owners snap and the scandal becomes global. By early 2025, everything collided. Quality complaints, price hikes, the revenue drop, the Korean scandal, the crackdown backlash, the boutique hostility, the shift in customer confidence. And the final straw was simple. Owners stopped feeling proud to own Chanel bags. They started feeling scammed. Thousands of Chanel lovers, loyal, long-term customers, took to TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, and fashion forums to air their frustration. Collectors began comparing their older bags to newer ones and pointing out differences Chanel didn't want people to see. Some called it the Chanel downgrade. Others called it luxury inflation. A few called it the beginning of the end. The outrage wasn't coming from haters. It was coming from Chanel's biggest fans. And that's why the scandal hit so hard. Because when the people who love you turn on you, it hurts. And Chanel felt it globally. The store experience that turned customers against the brand. While the scandals were circling online, something else was brewing inside Chanel boutiques. The shifting attitude of the brand's own frontline employees. Owners began sharing eerily similar stories about how boutique visits felt less luxurious and more uncomfortable. It started with subtle moments. A cold look, an uninterested tone, a sense that browsing was unwelcome unless you were clearly about to spend thousands. Then it escalated. Some customers described being followed around the boutique like shoplifters. Others said sales associates barely looked at them, even when they asked questions. One woman said she waited 45 minutes for someone to help her, only to be told the boutique was prioritizing VIP clients today. And the irony, she had already spent over $30,000 with Chanel that year. The internet began calling it the Chanel attitude, a mix of arrogance and suspicion that made customers wonder whether they were valued or merely tolerated. And when owners already feel betrayed by product quality and pricing, the last thing they want is condescension from a sales associate holding a bag that costs as much as rent. The boutique experience became something people dreaded, not admired, not enjoyed, dreaded, and that sentiment alone would have been dangerous. But then came the breaking point, videos of customers being humiliated inside boutiques. One viral clip showed a woman being scolded for touching a bag incorrectly. Another showed a customer being denied service because appointments only was enforced selectively. A third video captured a staff member rolling her eyes outright at a shopper. And thousands of Chanel owners watched these clips thinking, yeah, I've been treated like that too. The scandal wasn't just about the bags anymore. It was about the culture surrounding them. The prestige bubble that finally popped. Luxury brands survive on illusions. Scarcity, craftsmanship, myth-making, exclusivity. But illusions are delicate. They need to be protected, curated, reinforced. For decades, Chanel kept the illusion perfectly intact. But 2025 was the year the bubble popped. The quality complaints popped the first hole, the price hikes widened it, the political scandal in Korea ripped it open, the customer service issues tore it further, and then came the loudest pop of all. People started saying the quiet part out loud. Chanel isn't worth the price anymore. This was unheard of. Chanel bags were once the safe luxury investment. A classic flap was like a stylish savings account. They were supposed to appreciate, not depreciate. But in 2025, resale prices started slipping. Not dramatically, but enough for collectors to raise eyebrows. The worst part? Buyers reported that newly released Chanel bags flopped on resale platforms within months, sometimes selling for less than retail, and the moment people realized they could no longer justify the purchase as an asset, the emotional attachment began to crack. Because luxury buyers don't just purchase with their wallets, they purchase with identity, and when identity starts to feel foolish, loyalty dissolves fast. The silence that made everything worse. While all this chaos was unfolding, Chanel did something surprising and damaging. They stayed silent, no acknowledgement of the quality backlash, no public explanation for the revenue dip, no comment on the political scandal, no empathy for frustrated owners, no reassurance, no transparency, nothing. Silence works for mysterious, untouchable luxury, but it does not work in a scandal. Owners wanted answers. They wanted accountability. They wanted validation that their concerns weren't fake or exaggerated. Instead, they got cold PR distance. And that silence made people interpret everything in the worst possible way. If a brand refuses to address the scandal, maybe the scandal is worse than people think. And that is exactly how the outrage grew. The experts chime in, and their opinion makes it worse. As customer frustration peaked, fashion experts, luxury analysts, and bag restorers began sharing their professional opinions, and none of them were flattering. A well-known handbag spa owner revealed that she receives more new Chanel bags for repair than vintage ones, despite the vintage pieces being decades older. Another expert pointed out that Chanel's new gold tone hardware doesn't hold a candle to the 24-karat gold-plated hardware the brand used in the past. Several luxury consultants said Chanel's pricing defies rationality and feels like a brand competing with Hermès in price, but not in craftsmanship. And then a former artisan, someone who actually worked in the Chanel production chain years ago, said in an interview that the brand had gradually leaned toward faster turnaround and mass global supply, prioritizing output over artisanal detail. Even if Chanel denied these claims, the perception gained momentum, and perception is the only thing that matters in luxury. Once the experts began echoing buyers' concerns, the scandal became impossible to ignore. The resale community turns its back. One of the strongest indicators that the scandal hit deep was the reaction of the resale market. Chanel bags, especially classic styles, used to fly off resale platforms faster than any other brand except Hermès. They were gold, they were electricity, they were guaranteed sales. But suddenly, resellers began reporting slower movement. Some said pricing had to be adjusted. Others said buyers were hesitant because quality concerns made newer models feel less reassuring. Collectors started asking sellers questions that they never asked before. What year was this bag made? Which factory? Is it before or after the quality drop? Does it have the older hardware? Can you show the leather thickness compared to the previous season? For the first time ever, people were valuing Chanel's past more than its present. Old Chanel became the new treasure. New Chanel became the new gamble. And that is the worst kind of brand reputation shift. Once your older product is considered your better product, you've already lost control of your future. The pressure builds, and Chanel feels it. Inside the industry, whispers grew louder. Store associates allegedly admitted privately that some customers were returning bags due to manufacturing inconsistencies. Third-party authenticators reported increased submission volumes for newly purchased Chanel bags because customers didn't trust their boutique buys. Boutiques in Asia reportedly saw slower movement for non-classic styles. And then came the ultimate sign of distress. Chanel started quietly offering customers additional purchase opportunities that weren't previously so easy. No announcement, no visible policy change, just subtle signs that the brand was trying to keep sales strong. This was not normal. Luxury brands only loosen access when they feel pressure, and Chanel, they were feeling it everywhere. The customer emotion explodes. It wasn't just frustration, it wasn't just confusion, it wasn't even just anger, it was betrayal. Chanel owners who spent years buying into the brand's promise suddenly felt like they'd been tricked. Many said they'd never buy a new Chanel bag again. Others said they were switching to other designers. A few even said they were selling their entire collection. When owners start emotionally disconnecting from a luxury brand, that is a signal of brand damage that no marketing campaign can repair. This wasn't a scandal created by haters. This was a scandal created by loyal customers finally hitting their breaking point. And Chanel's attempt to maintain silence only fueled the collective disappointment. The internal leak that confirmed everyone's worst fear. Just when people thought the Chanel scandal had peaked, a new leak surfaced, one that magnified the entire situation. A former mid-level employee from Chanel's manufacturing division spoke anonymously to a major European fashion publication, and what she revealed lined up disturbingly well with what customers had been complaining about for months. She claimed that Chanel's explosive global demand over the last decade pushed internal production capacity to its limit. But instead of slowing down or scaling responsibly, the company allegedly began relying on accelerated production cycles in certain facilities. She didn't say they outsourced craftsmanship. Chanel is famously strict about that. But she did say the pressure to speed up output was unprecedented. In her words, "We weren't told to compromise on quality, but we were told to go faster than quality realistically allows." That quote alone spread everywhere. Suddenly, the puzzle pieces fit: the rushed stitching, the inconsistent leather batches, the lighter hardware, the increased repairs on new bags. The way older Chanel pieces felt almost indestructible in comparison. The former employee didn't outright accuse Chanel of cutting corners, but she didn't have to. The internet did that for her. Luxury owners reposted the interview with captions like, "So it wasn't in our heads. We knew something was off." They've been denying this for years. Chanel's silence after the interview was interpreted as confirmation. The secret material change theory goes viral. Then came the theory that turned the scandal from anger to obsession, the idea that Chanel quietly changed some of its materials. This started when leather experts and restorers began posting videos comparing Chanel leather from the early 2010s to leather from 2023 to 2025. They pointed out subtle differences. The older bags felt thicker, more textured, more resilient. The newer ones felt softer, but also more vulnerable to scratches and dents. One expert even performed a moisture test, showing that older caviar leather resisted water far better than newer versions. Another restorer revealed that the edge paint on newer bags peeled faster, something she said she rarely saw in older Chanel pieces. Then came the shocker. A repair technician revealed that the protective coating on certain newer Chanel lambskin bags seemed thinner than previous generations, making them far more prone to corner wear. No one had proof that Chanel changed anything on purpose, but everyone agreed something was different. And once the theory hit TikTok, it went viral instantly. Chanel collectors began documenting their findings, creating timelines of before and after, showing which years had the most issues. Some insisted the decline started around 2018. Others said 2020. A few pointed to pandemic-era production changes. Regardless of the exact year, the narrative exploded. Chanel's materials changed, the quality dropped, and the price kept climbing anyway. That combination was gasoline on the fire. The resentment toward the new Chanel customer. Another layer of the scandal involved a cultural shift in the customer base. Longtime collectors accused Chanel of catering more to hype-driven social media status buyers rather than genuine fashion lovers. These newer customers, the kind who buy a classic flap for Instagram photos, not for craftsmanship, created demand so enormous that Chanel allegedly pushed production harder to keep up. Suddenly, the boutique wasn't filled with collectors who understood artistry. It was filled with shoppers who wanted a status symbol, and Chanel's decisions reflected that shift. Stricter access policies, bags reserved for loyal buyers, certain items impossible to purchase without a spending history, a sales experience that felt more like luxury gatekeeping than customer service. Collectors said they felt abandoned. New buyers felt disrespected. And Chanel's attempt to control exclusivity backfired hard, because instead of feeling exclusive, Chanel felt manipulative, and in luxury, manipulation is poison. The global customer backlash reaches fever pitch. By mid-2025, the outrage wasn't localized. It wasn't niche. It wasn't limited to Reddit or TikTok. It was global. Chinese shoppers complained about inconsistent craftsmanship. Korean consumers boycotted Chanel boutiques after the political scandal. European buyers criticized Chanel for artificial inflation. Americans posted videos comparing their bags year by year, showing quality dips. Middle Eastern influencers voiced frustration with erratic boutique policies. Even celebrities subtly weighed in, with some switching to other brands, a move fans noticed instantly. When fashion people stop carrying a brand, their absence speaks louder than a statement. This wasn't a temporary uproar, it was a full erosion of trust. Some owners called it luxury fatigue, others called it the Chanel disappointment era. A few went further and said it outright: Chanel is losing its soul. That line echoed everywhere, because luxury isn't about money, it's about emotional connection. And Chanel's connection with its customers was fracturing. The brand's silent struggle behind the scenes. Although Chanel publicly stayed quiet, insiders hinted at panic behind closed doors. Boutiques were allegedly instructed to improve friendliness and attentiveness. Certain styles remained unsold longer than expected. Internal repair requests increased. Boutique staff reported receiving additional training on handling customer concerns. The biggest rumor? That Chanel was reevaluating future price hikes due to consumer sensitivity. Those two words, consumer sensitivity, basically translated to people are fed up. Chanel, the brand that used to raise prices without blinking, was suddenly reconsidering. That alone was a sign the scandal had shaken them. Luxury giants only pause when they feel threatened, and Chanel was threatened. The undeniable result: the brand losing control of its story. Chanel once controlled its narrative flawlessly. It dictated what elegance meant, what luxury meant, what exclusivity meant. But 2025 was the first year in a long time that Chanel wasn't shaping the story. The customers were. The brand once seen as unshakable now looked vulnerable. The bags once seen as untouchable now looked imperfect. The prices once seen as justified now looked absurd. The boutiques once seen as aspirational now looked intimidating. And worst of all, the loyalty that once seemed eternal now seemed fragile. Because loyalty doesn't survive scandal, not without acknowledgement, humility, or accountability. And Chanel gave customers none of that. So that's the truth behind the Chanel luxury bag scandal. A perfect storm of rising prices, declining quality, boutique arrogance, political controversy, and complete silence from the brand. A storm powerful enough to shake one of the most iconic fashion houses in the world. Customers aren't just disappointed, they're hurt, they're angry, and they're speaking louder than Chanel ever expected. Whether Chanel recovers from this, or whether this becomes the moment the brand's prestige permanently dims, depends entirely on what they do next. But one thing is clear: the world isn't blindly worshiping Chanel anymore. They're watching, they're questioning, and they're demanding better. If you've ever owned a Chanel bag or dreamed of one, what do you think about this scandal? Share your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, and stick around, because the luxury world is changing fast, and we're here to uncover every scandal, every shift, and every secret right as it happens.